Good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's nice of you to be here. I felt guilty as I walked in the doors to this building and didn't have to stand in line. So I apologize to all of you who did. It was uncomfortable for me, but I didn't know how to have all of you be my guest in getting through the security this morning. We're delighted to have you here, and we're exceptionally pleased to have the commander, the national commander, with us this morning, and we're anxious to hear from the veterans of foreign wars. It's good to be here soon with Chairman Bost, with Ranking Member Blumenthal, with Chairman Takano, and the rest of our colleagues in this second of our joint hearings this year. I welcome our witnesses from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, including Carol Whitmore, the first female Commander-in-Chief of the VFW. I also welcome each of the I also want to welcome each of the organizations on our second panel. Thanks to each of you for taking the time to travel to the nation's capital, to come to Capitol Hill, and to advocate for veterans across the country. I extend a special thanks to the veterans from Kansas who are here in person or watching from home, and I look forward to meeting with the Kansans in my office this afternoon. Your advocacy, the VFW and the other VSOs, your advocacy plays a critical role in informing us of the challenges veterans face on a daily basis, whether it is healthcare issues because of toxic exposure during your service to the nation, or long wait times to access care or receive the benefits that you each earned from the Department of Veterans Affairs. The role of this committee, the role of our two committees, is to make certain that the VA is improving the lives of veterans and that every veteran has access to timely, high-quality services they deserve, that promises that were made are promises that are kept. I look forward to hearing today how we can work together with each of the organizations who will testify this morning and their membership across the country to fulfill that mission. Thank you again all for being here, and I now recognize the ranking member, Senator Blumenthal, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that very important today is the picture of this committee, a bipartisan statement of support for the veterans of America. And nobody advocates more effectively or strongly than the veterans of foreign wars. Thank you, every one of you, for being here today. I want to thank I know we have some from Connecticut because I met with you yesterday. Hoorah, thank you for being here. Today is a day when I know most of us have on our minds the safety and well-being of men and women in uniform in combat right now. And I don't need to belabor the point to this group that our thoughts and prayers are with them. They are our heroes who deserve our support now and when they come home as veterans, to leave no veteran behind. When it comes to education, training, the GI Bill, and yes, health care, including mental health care, we should have every veteran as a priority and meet their needs constantly and consistently without creating uncertainty that may cause them additional anxiety. And I know everybody in this room here today shares that view. Today is going to be an important day as well because I am going to go to the floor of the United States Senate and ask unanimous consent that we pass the Richard Starr Act. Right now, it is scheduled for noon. I don't suggest that anybody leave the hearing to be there, but I will be thinking of you as I offer it and make the case that this measure is long overdue. It is unacceptable, simply inexcusable that tens of thousands of combat-injured veterans are denied full military benefits, they have earned. There is no excuse for failing to give them what they have earned. And I want to express my thanks to you, to the VFW, to the Veteran Service Organizations for your constant and effective advocacy. And I know that we will continue working together. Let me just say finally that we need to make sure that the VA serves your needs. It's about you. It's not about us making speeches. It's not about the workforce at the VA, although many of them are veterans and they deserve our support. We are enormously fortunate to have some of the most skilled and talented and dedicated healthcare providers, surgeons, doctors, nurses, schedulers, security and custodial care. It's all a team, but eventually you are the ones who are the beneficiaries of that program, of the other kinds of care that is provided by the VA, and the PAC Act, where you have played a critical role in making our veterans community aware of the need to undergo screening and to seek benefits. We need to increase that awareness so that more people take advantage of it, and the VA has to provide a workforce that can deal with those applications for compensation and care. So thank you for being here today. It makes an enormous difference, never doubt it, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal, thank you. I now recognize the ranking member from the House, Mr. Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Moran. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here to inform us of the issues facing veterans and their families. I especially want to welcome those who have traveled from the great state of California. Where are you? Thank you for making the trip here. Thank you, veterans from all 50 states and our territories, for being here. It's so good to see you all here, and a very special welcome to VFW National Commander Carol Whitmore of Iowa, the first woman to lead the VFW in its 125-year history. Welcome, Commander. And I see beside you is another woman veteran, the Honorable Joni Ernst. Women are the fastest growing demographic in today's military. Commander Whitmore, welcome. Your leadership reflects the changing face of our force and the future of veteran leadership in this country. I'd also like to welcome VFW Auxiliary National President Lois Callahan of Arkansas. Lois. And the representatives from all the organizations on our second panel of witnesses. It's great to see you all, and I look forward to an enlightening conversation. But before we get started, we need to acknowledge the events of this past weekend. So far, we know that 6 U.S. service members lost their lives in Operation Epic Fury, and at least 18 more have been injured. Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge, I'd ask that we take a moment of silence to hold these service members and their families in our thoughts and our prayers.
I agree with that.
As we honor those who recently lost, who were recently lost, we must acknowledge a hard truth. Every new conflict creates another generation of veterans and their families that we owe our support to. It is never acceptable to cut veterans' benefits. It is indefensible to do it while actively sending more American service members into harm's way. This is the time for us to fully invest in the future of VA and ensure that the department will be there to care for these veterans and their families when they come home. Instead, this administration has been subjecting veterans to uncertainty and chaos. As you are all aware, Secretary Collins recently attempted to publish an interim final rule that would limit VA's obligations to veterans whose service-connected conditions are improved by medications. The response from the VSO community was immediate and unified, and it worked. This is a victory that we should all learn from. When veterans stand together, things get done. In this case, the Secretary finally admitted defeat and rescinded the rule. That outcome shows the power of unified veteran advocacy. However, while we may have won this battle, don't grow complacent. There are more on the horizon. We are now bracing for a massive reorganization of the Veterans Health Administration, one developed without consultation with Congress or input from the veteran community. We keep hearing phrases from VA leadership like, do more with less. Doing more with less has never worked well for VA. VA cannot deliver more care with fewer doctors. VA cannot process more claims with fewer examiners and VBA. You cannot strengthen VA by shrinking it. VA needs social workers, janitorial staff, police officers to ensure VA is meeting its mission. While I never wore the uniform, I take seriously my responsibility to defend the promises we made to those of you who did. We owe a great debt to those left behind, one that cannot ever be repaid. And that is why I support my colleague Representative Hayes' Caring for Survivors Act and my colleague Representative Hudson's Love Lives On Act. Also, I know that many of you are waiting to see progress on the Major Richard Starr Act. I've heard you loud and clear, so has my colleague Senator Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal, Godspeed today. And that's why I co-sponsored this bill. It's time to get it passed now. These bills are not inexpensive, but honoring our commitments never is. But if we can find money for the administration's priorities, we can find the funds for our nation's veterans, their dependents, and survivors. Congress must make the correct and moral decision to prioritize funding for these bills. And we should do so without asking veterans themselves to shoulder the costs. We know veterans are willing to make sure their comrades are taken care of, and I respect that immensely. But the point is, you shouldn't have to. Veterans should never be asked to pay for their own benefits. That is Congress's responsibility. The American public has told us that it is willing to take care of these folks. It just requires us in Congress to do the right thing. One of the top priorities I'd like to bring up, which I know you all share, is Representative Pappas's GUARD Act, which seeks to crack down on claim sharks. Claim sharks have sunk to a new low. I have seen ads where they are using the chaos sown by VA to scare veterans into signing up for their services to, quote unquote, protect their ratings. I think this is disgusting. It is predatory, and it must end. Claim sharks must be stopped. Unfortunately, congressional action has stalled recently because of expensive lobbying efforts on behalf of these companies. So I hope all those in the room today and all those listening at home will press their member of Congress to act. The time is now. Now, we can debate policy, we can disagree on tactics, but there should be no disagreement on this. When America asks its sons and daughters to serve, America owes them care, fully, promptly, and without condition. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this important hearing today, and I look forward to a frank and fruitful discussion. Thank you, and I yield back.
Ranking Member Takano, thank you very much. I now recognize the Executive Director of the VFW's Washington office, Ryan Gallucci, to introduce VFW national officers. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Senate and House Veterans Affairs Committee, I am honored to introduce the national officers of the VFW and our auxiliary. Mr. Chairman, please allow me to ask those who are introduced to remain standing, and I wish to request the audience to hold applause until all have been introduced.
Yes, sir.
The VFW Auxiliary, National President Lois Callahan from Arkansas, Senior Vice President Donna Mills of Pennsylvania, Junior Vice President Kim Harney from Arizona, and the National Auxiliary Secretary Treasurer Ann Pantelikas from Connecticut. Our national officers of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Senior Vice Commander-in-Chief Corey Geisler from Wisconsin, Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief Glenn Umberger Jr. from Pennsylvania, Adjutant General Dan West from Texas, Quartermaster General Mark Garduno from Delaware, Assistant Adjutant General Brian Walker from Tennessee, Chaplain Darren Atkins from Kentucky, Judge Advocate General Ron Ruskovitz from Connecticut, Chief of Staff Kevin Jones from Missouri, Inspector General Chris Haynes from Ohio, Surgeon General Douglas Welch from Idaho, and Commander-in-Chief Whitmore's spouse, Bradley Whitmore. To my left, the chairman of the VFW National Legislative Committee, Jason Johns from Wisconsin. Skipping over our commander-in-chief, director of our VFW National Legislative Service, Christina Keenan from Department of Europe, and the director of the VFW National Veterans Service, Michael Figlioli from Massachusetts. I would also like to recognize the 11th class of VFW SVA Legislative Fellows, the VFW Women Veterans Committee, our partners from Gruntstyle Foundation, and our past commanders-in-chief and auxiliary presidents who are with us.
Ryan, thank you for that introduction, and welcome to all of you, and particularly to the leaders that were just introduced. You are welcome we're welcome to have you in our committee hearing today. We thank you for your service to our country and for your service to other veterans. The honor of introducing the National Commander now falls to one of our colleagues. And I now welcome to the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs and joint session with the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, our colleague, Senator Joni Ernst. Senator?
Thank you, Chairman Moran, Chairman Bost, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and Ranking Member Takano. And as a lifetime member of the VFW, it is such a privilege to be here with you today. But, Mr. Chairman, it is much more of a privilege to be here to introduce someone that is not just a veteran and a fellow Iowan, but someone who is also a very dear friend. So thank you to one of our nation's most respected advocates for veterans. Carol Whitmore, Commander-in-Chief of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Yes, please. I would also like to warmly welcome her husband, Brad, who now retired, advocated tirelessly for Iowans veterans for many, many years. Thank you so much, Brad. I have had the pleasure of knowing Carol for many, many years. We were just commenting on my hair color. She is a native of Traer, Iowa, and attended the University of Northern Iowa. Last year, Carol made history as the first woman to serve as Commander-in-Chief of the VFW, a milestone that reflects both her leadership and the evolving face of those who have served our nation in uniform. She began her service in the gender-segregated Women's Army Corps before transitioning into the fully integrated regular Army, and ultimately concluded her career as a combat veteran of Operations Iraqi Freedom and New Dawn. During her deployment to Iraq, she earned the Army's Combat Action Badge in recognition of her personal courage and leadership. She has served at every level of the VFW, from post commander to department commander of Iowa, before being elected to lead one of the largest and most influential veterans service organizations in the country. Her leadership reflects the values Iowans know well: hard work, accountability, and commitment to their community. As a national leader who has served in uniform, Commander Whitmore understands the real-world impact of technology modernization and economic opportunity policies on veterans' access to benefits, care, and employment, making her perspective especially valuable to the committee's work today. And I also want to acknowledge, with the ongoing operations, the loss of those 6 souls that we have seen in the strikes, the counter strikes coming from Iran. And we pray for the families and their units. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Senator Ernst, thank you very much. Commander Whitmore, you've been introduced by one of our colleagues who served more than just in the Senate, served her nation in uniform, and who holds the high regard of members of this committee and members of the United States Senate. And what she says we take to heart, and we thank her for her comments today and bringing you a little bit closer to us in a more personal way. So, Commander Whitmore, let me now recognize you for your testimony as soon as you determine hair color. Commander Whitmore, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Operation Epic Fury also and give our thoughts and prayers to those who made the ultimate sacrifice and those who are in harm's way still, like the VFW National Claims Representative Rosa Valdez, currently serving in Kuwait. Chairman Moran and Bost, ranking members Blumenthal and Takano, and members of the committees, thank you for this opportunity to testify on behalf of the nearly 1.3 million members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States and its auxiliary. Our message is simple and resolute. Honor the contract. When Americans raise their right hand and volunteer to serve, this nation makes a solemn promise. If they are wounded, become ill, or die in service, America will care for them and their families. That promise is not charity. It is the binding contract between service members and the country they defend. When some suggest that veterans' benefits are too expensive, let us be clear. This is the cost of war. As a former Army nurse, caring for service members and veterans is not an abstract policy issue for me. It is personal. When I retired in 2013, my duty to those wounded on the battlefield did not end. And it is our responsibility, yours and mine, to see that promise through. The PACT Act was a landmark achievement, but passage alone does not fulfill the promise. Congress must ensure the VA aggressively applies its PACT Act authorities to address unrecognized toxic exposures from Vietnam-era burn pits to K2 veterans, submariners, and others exposed in dangerous conditions. The surge in PACT Act claims has driven the necessary expansion of the VA health system. As demand grows, VA direct care and community care must operate on a unified system. Veterans experience health care in moments of need. In those moments, what matters most is reliable, timely, high-quality care delivered with dignity and respect. We must build a truly veteran-centric system. Scheduling an appointment should not feel like navigating a maze. VA must set and enforce clear benchmarks for wait times and travel standards. Veterans in consultation with their providers must retain the ability to choose the setting that best meets their needs. To strengthen that system, we urge Congress to pass the Veterans Access Act of 2025, because veterans should never have to fight their way through red tape just to receive the care they earned. Parts of the VA community care remain outdated, such as the Foreign Medical Program, which serves disabled veterans overseas. Blaine Gish is a retired Army veteran living in Berlin with 100% VA rating for service-connected conditions. When he needed hearing aids, he was required to pay more than 5,000 euro up front and waited more than 6 months for VA reimbursement. The paper check he eventually received did not account for the exchange rate differences, leaving him with more than $1,000 in out-of-pocket costs. Meanwhile, veterans using stateside VA health care receive hearing aids at no cost. Veterans overseas deserve equal treatment. We urge Congress to modernize this program and provide veterans abroad many of whom are still supporting the U.S. mission, with the care that they deserve. Another area of VA community care that needs attention is CHAMP VA. Families who rely on CHAMP VA experience slow claims processing and limited access. These gaps delay care and strain families who have already sacrificed enough. We urge Congress to modernize and reform CHAMP VA. Honoring the contract also requires urgent action on veteran suicide. If you are a veteran, family member, caregiver, or survivor whose life has been affected by veteran suicide, please stand if you are able. Members of the committee, this is the scope of the challenge before us. Many veterans seeking mental health care are prescribed psychiatric medications, including some that carry the strongest FDA warnings for risks such as suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Veterans must be fully informed and actively engaged in their treatment decisions. After leaving the Air Force, veteran Derek Blumke from Michigan was placed on multiple central nervous system medications by the VA, ultimately cycling through a medication cocktail that required a painful year-long withdrawal. This underscores the problem with uninformed psychiatric care. We must do better. Congress should require written informed consent for all VA-prescribed psychiatric medications. We also urge Congress to pass the Veteran Suicide Prevention Act to strengthen oversight by reviewing suicides in which medications may have been a factor. We cannot improve what we do not examine. Honoring the contract also means delivering innovative, effective care for the signature wounds of modern war, traumatic brain injury, and PTSD. Joshua Starks from Oklahoma, a former infantry officer with 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, endured months of delays and ineffective treatment before finding help outside the VA through cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation, outdoor programs, and neurofeedback. These approaches helped him manage his symptoms, but only after he lost his marriage and his military career. Veterans should not have to leave the VA to find healing. That is why we urge Congress to pass the Innovative Therapy Centers of Excellence Act and ensure that the future of veteran care is driven by science, urgency, and the unwavering promise we made to those who served. Another critical concern in honoring the contract is the transition from military life to civilian life. Nearly 200,000 service members leave active duty each year, yet too many, especially those separating from overseas assignments in places like Poland and Kosovo, do not complete the transition assistance program at the required time or with adequate resources. I recently spoke with soldiers in both countries who were preparing to leave the military and had limited support for their transition. When service members separate without proper guidance, they risk delays in receiving the benefits they earned through service. That is why we urge Congress to pass the TAP Promotion Act to ensure service members connect with VA-accredited representatives before discharge to receive earned benefits the moment they become civilians. Ensuring seamless continuity of care and compensation is how we honor the contract in real time. Finally, though my next 2 topics fall under the purview of the Armed Services Committee, I include them in my testimony because several members on the dais also sit on those committees. Service members are taught to leave no one behind. That commitment never ends. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency conducts the solemn mission of accounting for those still missing from past conflicts as it works to recover and identify remains so families can achieve closure. We must fully fund this mission At a time when the Pentagon proposes a record $1.5 trillion budget, once again, the mission of DPAA is facing cuts. This is unacceptable and contrary to the warrior ethos. Fully fund DPAA so that our missing can receive their final salute on American soil. This last issue represents what we consider a dishonorable breach of the contract. We must pass the Major Richard Starr Act now. This offset forces more than 50,000 medically retired combat veterans to surrender their earned retirement pay because they also receive VA disability compensation. Alex Henry, a National Guard member from Arizona, survived an IED blast in Iraq and was medically retired with a traumatic brain injury. His condition worsened and eventually prevented him from working. His wife became his full-time caregiver, and they were forced to sell their home. No veteran should face financial ruin because of this unjust offset. Veterans medically retired due to combat wounds did not choose to leave their service early. Their service was taken from them. Military retirement pay is earned through years in uniform, while disability compensation exists to recognize the lifelong impact of duty-related injuries. This is not double dipping. This is double sacrifice. Pass the Major Richard Starr Act now. The all-volunteer force relies on trust, the trust that when young Americans raise their right hand, this nation will keep its promise. Veterans have fulfilled their obligation. Now the country must honor the contract, not partially, not eventually, not someday, but today, fully and faithfully. Chairman Moran and Bost, ranking members Blumenthal and Takano, and members of the committees, thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
National Commander, thank you very much for your testimony. You indicated in your conclusion a couple of issues that don't rest with the jurisdiction of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. But I am a longtime co-sponsor of the Major Richard Starr Act, and I appreciate the strong support for that bill from the VFW as demonstrated by what you had to say and what the members of the VFW said in standing and applauding behind you. I look forward to the enactment of that legislation. And while that legislation is not part of our committee's jurisdiction, that will not be an excuse for me to work to make certain that we find the path forward. And I have no doubt that the VFW will assist in that effort based upon your testimony and my knowledge of the VFW. So you have my commitment to find the best path forward that I can, working with my colleagues on other committees to try to make certain that happens as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
You indicated in your testimony a couple of the things I was going to ask you. So what's the answer to those who argue that receiving both military retirement pay from the DOD and disability compensation from the VA equates to providing two simultaneous payments for the same service-connected disability, what you also called or said is not double dipping? What's the best answer to that question?
Thank you for that question. You know, the Military Retirement Fund was created just for a purpose just like this, that the Chapter 61 retirees are falling into. And the Military Retirement Fund is flush. It has over $1 trillion. So I think that is a perfect place to start looking.
Thank you. You gave a real-world example of the circumstances that a service member, a veteran, may find themselves in because of the prohibitions that the Richard Starr Act would correct. Would you care to give other examples of examples that you've seen at the VFW where in the absence of the passage of the Richard Starr Act, veterans and their families suffer?
You know, every day I talk to veterans that have this incurred on them, and it's shameful. It is shameful that we have not honored the contract for those veterans who have earned that right.
Do you think there's also an additional benefit that passage of the Richard Starr Act would be another asset in our military recruitment and retention of those who soon will serve and those who are serving today?
Absolutely. You know, when a veteran transitions from service, they go home and they talk to their friends, their families, their loved ones, and if they have a bad transition coming out of service, or if they incurred, you know, a bad experience, as in the Richard Starr Act, that does affect recruiting, and it affects national security.
National Commander, I look forward to working with you and Kansas VFW members to see that the goal of the VFW is accomplished.
Thank
I now
you.
recognize Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that really powerful testimony, National Commander. And I agree with you totally that the costs of caring for our veterans are part of the costs of war. We need to educate Americans about that basic principle. The $1 trillion or more budget for our military, and I'm on the Armed Services Committee, so I'm very familiar with that budget, should be regarded as a down payment, not an end point for the obligation that we owe our national defense, and caring for veterans is part of our national defense.
Yes.
Just to ask one more question, following up on the chairman's line of inquiry. I don't know what the cost is of the Richard Starr Act. Some have said that it's in the billions of dollars compared to the $1 trillion for the National Defense Authorization Act. It is a fraction, a pittance, a rounding error. Would you agree with me that whatever that cost, the Richard Starr Act is well worth it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I want to ask you about the PAC Act because your testimony is very pointed on the need for recognition of additional health conditions. The K2 veterans from Kashi Kanabad, the air base in Uzbekistan, I've led the effort to try to recognize the health conditions that have afflicted them as a result of their exposure to toxic chemicals. The 455 locations in the United States where there's been confirmed PFAS exposure. Would you agree that the health conditions eligible under the PAC Act for the presumptive consideration ought to be expanded to include all of those kinds of locations where veterans have been exposed to toxic chemicals?
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that.
That will be one of my main missions in this session and in future sessions, along with others on this committee. I helped to lead passage of the PAC Act. We have the PAC Act because of the veterans service organizations and the veterans themselves who literally slept on the steps of the Capitol. We tend to forget. They literally persuaded my colleagues by their physical presence, their fight. And we may need you again on the steps of the Capitol. I know you'll be there. thank you very much for all you do for our veterans.
Thank you. We'll be there.
Thank you.
Representative Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations
Thank you.
on your election. As the son of VFW post commander and a auxiliary president, I grew up when I was about this tall, going to everything, kinds of events. I know what you're doing, and I know the support you get from the community. Keep it up. Time, once it's wasted, is gone. Money can be recouped over time. So let's not waste any time. Commander Whitmore, could you share the VFW's views on Secretary Collins' planned reorganization of the Veterans Health Administration?
Thank you for that question. I am going to turn that over to our expert, Ryan Gallucci, on that.
Thank you, Comrade Commander-in-Chief. The VFW generally supports the effort to restructure Veterans Health Administration. In fact, it's something that even under the last administration, we had conversations with Secretary McDonough about. We put out a pretty strong statement right before the holidays and basically said any system that has 18 VISNs numbered 1 through 23 is overdue for reform. We saw some challenges with governance in the electronic health record, and it's because you had these little fiefdoms all thinking they all report to the Undersecretary for Health. I think there's a responsible way to fix that. We look forward to working with Secretary Collins and the committee.
You want to be engaged to help in the reform of the bureaucracy that has succeeded in one thing, serving itself, not the veterans. And that's what Secretary Collins is trying to do, is get the entirety of the Veterans Administration bureaucracy serving the veterans. Commander Whitmore, VA is the second largest agency in the federal budget. Where do you see opportunities within the planned VHA reorganization to improve oversight of VA dollars? So if you're going to, give that to Ryan, that's okay too.
Well, thank you for that question. There's a lot of areas that can have improvement, and that is one of those is women's health care. And I'm very sensitive to that, we are the largest growing demographic in the military. And the improvements for women's health care certainly has increased over the years, especially with increasing things as menopause, endometriosis. And, on a personal note, I would like to ensure that the VA stops calling me Mr. Whitmore when I come in for my appointment.
We'll take that one for action. I see my time is running short. We've got our plate full working with all of you, and we're only as good as we are in the war fighting is because men and women like you continue to serve our great country, and we will serve you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Commander, I would guess, based upon your last few sentences, you no longer will be unrecognized at the Department of Veterans Affairs when you seek medical care and treatment. So if the VA is out there listening, please correct this pronto and avoid that mistake again. Representative Takano, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commander Whitmore, one thing I heard loud and clear from the veteran community this month is that veterans should never be punished for getting treatment. Before VA issued the impact of medication interim final rule and then reverse course, did VA consult with VFW or discuss a plan in advance?
They did not.
Should VFW and other VSOs be at the table before changes like that are rolled out?
Absolutely.
Well, let's make sure that happens. Now, Commander, this morning, the New York Times reported that VA cut more than 1,500 doctors and almost 5,000 nurses. Are you concerned that cuts like these and shrinking VA's clinical staff is unsustainable and threaten VA's ability to deliver direct health care?
There is always a concern with that, and I believe my counterpart, Christina Keenan, has some information on that.
Thank you, Commander Whitmore. Of course, we want VA to be fully funded and fully staffed. So we are concerned. We haven't seen a direct impact yet, but we're continuing to monitor that situation because our veterans, including myself, who use VA full-time, are worried about when they see cuts like that.
Thank you. There are several bills pending that would radically improve benefits for survivors. For example, Representative Hayes' Caring for Survivors Act. Commander, your testimony says that this isn't charity, it's a promise. On survivor benefits, DIC is still set at 43% of other federal survivor programs at 55%. Do you agree that Congress should bring DIC up to parity, and we should do it in a way that doesn't take earned support away from other veterans to pay for it?
Yes, absolutely. DIC has not had any improvements or increases since 1993. And I have a good friend, Deidre Ziegler, who lives in Alaska, lost her husband last year, and she is struggling financially because she has not been able to connect the dots for her husband's sudden demise and the service connection with that. And it's shameful that we treat our spouses like that and have not increased that at all.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I asked that the same of the Major Richard Starr Act. Combat injured veterans shouldn't lose retirement pay because they were hurt in service. I think you all agree that the Major Starr Act is about basic fairness, ending an offset that reduces earned retirement pay for combat injured veterans, and Congress needs to move it without making veterans trade away other benefits to cover the costs. Is that right?
Correct.
Well, I certainly hope that there's no objections to the UC that Senator Blumenthal asks today to pass the Richard Starr Act today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ranking Member, thank you. Representative King-Hines.
Thank you, National Commander Whitmore, for your testimony and for your team being present here this morning. Before I start, I want to give a special shout out on Hoffa to the VFW chapter in Saipan, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, which is the district that I represent, the Commander Brad Rosala and Quartermaster Pete Hallahan. And I want to say thank you to all of you for your continued advocacy and leadership. The CNMI represents, we have one of the highest per capita rates of military service in the nation. And when our sons and daughters, mothers and fathers return home, we don't come home to a community VA hospital. We don't have a community out-based patient clinic. We don't have immediate access to specialty care. Our veterans have to travel thousands of miles away to be able to get specialty care. And all too often, the choice is between having to pay for airfare or paying for their utilities, which means that they just delay the care altogether. And so, National Commander Whitmore, when you started off by saying honor the contract, I represent a jurisdiction where that contract is not being honored today. And I look at all of you who all too well know what it means to serve in a time of war. And so I just wanted to also underscore my gratitude this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
One of my, one of the things that I want to focus on, given all these conversations about VA reform, is how do we balance, right, some of these competing concerns and competing priorities, specifically community care, because there's a school of thought that if we expand access to community care, we're compromising access to direct VA care. And I kind of wanted to further flesh out that conversation and hear from you what that would look like.
Thank you for that question. I have visited Saipan, and I know how isolated it is there, and it is hard for healthcare to exist there in the direct VA healthcare form, and that's why there has to be a balance between VA healthcare and the community care. I would like Christina Keenan to expound on that just a little bit more.
Thank you, Commander Whitmore. Something that she mentioned in her testimony was access to community care. So that might be a perfect supplement for folks in territories, in rural areas where there are large driving distances or where there just isn't VA services available. What our focus is on is making sure that access is seamless, that referrals are quick, that making appointments is quick and understood by veterans, and that veterans are informed of when they can go and get care in the community. So funding needs to be balanced. We don't want to forget the infrastructure and the needs of our VA direct care, but community care is very important as well. We thank you for that question.
Thank you for that. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Boaston, our ranking members, Blumenthal and Decano. I also want to thank you, Commander Whitmore, for your service to our country in the military and for your continued service to our nation's veterans in this role. It's
Thank
deeply
you.
appreciated. I also want to thank the rest of the VFW personnel who are here today, especially the Granite Staters out there, for your service to our country and to your fellow veterans. And finally, before I get to my questions, I want to say that I know that all of us, no matter our political party, are united in praying for the safety of our service members who are right now in harm's way. And we are keeping the families of the heroes we lost this week in our heart. We owe them a debt of gratitude that we can never fully repay, but we have to do everything we can to try to do that every single day. Commander, I'd like to start by discussing a topic that is deeply concerning to me: fraud and scams that target veterans. You've given testimony on claim sharks, so-called consultants who take advantage of veterans by charging fees to help the veteran file their VA benefit claim, and I put help in quotes there, effectively exploiting a legal loophole to profit off of disabled veterans. I've long supported reinstating penalties for these unaccredited predators, but they aren't alone. Veterans are targeted by a wide range of scammers who seek to take advantage of them and the benefits they've earned. Commander, can you talk about how fraud and scams harm veterans and their families and what Congress can do to prevent that?
Thank you for that question. It is shameful that they prey on desperate veterans, a veteran that is already desperate either emotionally, financially, to charge exorbitant prices. Illegal is illegal, period.
Yep.
But I would like... I would like Mike Figlioli, our Service Officer Director, to talk on that a little bit more, though.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, because I have one more question. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commander-in-Chief. We obviously support the GUARD Act, and we thank the committee for that. As the Commander-in-Chief said, illegal is illegal.
Yep.
And if you were going to touch a claim, you must be accredited, and you cannot collect fees, period.
Thank you. I'll continue to work with all of you on that. Commander, your written testimony discussed the value of VA healthcare, and you highlighted how direct care from the VA, when properly resourced and managed, delivers high-quality outcomes and really earns trust. This highlights the importance of supporting VA healthcare and veterans' access to it. So I've continued to call on this administration to publish its plan for a full-service VA hospital in New Hampshire so that we are no longer the only state in the lower 48 without one. Can you just please discuss again the importance of ensuring that veterans continue to have access to VA direct care?
Thank you for that. I think veterans mostly want to have VA health care. It's the personal bond that we have with each veteran. They want to go to a place where they know that they can talk to somebody about a home situation or something other than what their health care is with that military connection.
Yeah.
They crave that. They want that.
That competency, that
Yes.
understanding of the military culture,
Yes.
too. Yep. Thank you so much.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you, Commander, and your team. And I want to thank all the veterans and VFW members who've traveled across the country for this wonderful hearing. This is one of my favorite hearings because it always gets a little rowdy and excited. So I want to, speaking of rowdy, I want to recognize some of the veterans, maybe not as far as Saipan, Congresswoman, but I want to recognize my veteran VFW members from Alaska. They probably traveled some of the furthest distance. How about a round of applause for my fellow Alaskans? We're proud of the fact that we have more veterans per capita than any state in the country. In Alaska, I retired after 30 years in the Marine Corps as an infantry and recon officer a couple of years ago, and I may be Alaska's 8th United States Senator. We're a young state, Alaska, but with the exception of father and husband, the title I am most proud of by far is United States Marine. I knew that would get a couple of oorahs. And now the title I'm also very, very proud of is United States Veteran. and I'm a proud member of Eagle River VFW Post 9785. So thank you. When you guys are roaming the halls, it just, it's great. It warms my heart to every single one of you. Commander, I wanted to follow on your testimony about mental health. You know, my state has a lot of veterans, like I said, but a lot of suicide and mental health challenges. I recently held a roundtable in Fairbanks, Alaska, at one of our vet centers on mental health challenges. And one of the issues that came up was this lack of continuum of care in our state. And more specifically, while there are a couple intensive outpatient programs, IOP programs, in Anchorage, in most of my state, including Fairbanks, there's none. So when a veteran finishes inpatient treatment on mental health challenges, and again, in Alaska, we don't have anything for that, so they have to leave the state to go get that treatment. When they come back, there's no continuum of care in a lot of the communities, no IOP programs or things like that. So can you tell me more about the gaps the VFW sees in mental health treatment, both in community care and in the VA, and are there things that we in the Congress should be doing to make it so if you are coming back from inpatient treatment, you shouldn't have to have a hard landing. You should have a soft landing, being able to go to IOP centers throughout the state, whether it's a VA center or a community care center. And if that's something we can work with you guys on, I think it's really, really important.
Thank you for that question. A veteran should not have to start over
Yeah.
in its care treatment. There are so many different modalities that the VFW would like Congress to look at, hyperbaric treatment and medical cannabis. There are many different things that can be done. A veteran doesn't want another pill thrown at them.
Right.
They are tired of that. They're tired of feeling not themselves or around their families, their children. They want something different. They want a different treatment so that they can feel good about themselves. So I agree, they shouldn't have to start over. I do have that Ryan Gallucci can probably expound on that just a little bit more.
And if we have some time, absolutely. It's about building up these networks, especially for those types of outpatient programs that a veteran might need. We've been, ever since even Phoenix, we've said community care is part of VA care.
Yeah.
And especially in a place like Alaska, where veterans have always, where access is a challenge, but making sure that VA has those networks in place and that they're complementary to VA, well, seamless to the veteran. So that when the veteran needs care, they get the care.
Well, we'd like to work with you, Commander, and your team on how we improve that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brzezinski.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Chairman Moran and Ranking Member Blumenthal, Chairman Bost and Ranking Member Takano, thank you for convening this year's joint VSO hearing. And thank you to every veteran here today for your service and for showing up and lending your voice here with us. And a shout out to the Illinois veterans in the room as well. I would like to start out by also offering, in addition, my special recognition to Commander-in-Chief Carol Whitmore as the first woman to lead the VFW. Thank you for your service and for the message your leadership sends to women veterans across the country. On that note, I'd like to use my short time that I have to focus on women veterans. In your testimony, VFW makes clear that as the veteran population diversifies, VA must deliver culturally responsible, responsive, and evidence-based care, and that requires stronger provider training and better measurement of outcomes. This is also what I've heard from the Women Veterans Council I have in my own district. We also know women veterans face unique mental health risks, often tied to trauma exposure, and that the care environment and the trust in the VA can determine whether someone engages in the treatment. VFW urges more consistent demographic data and outcomes reporting so disparities can be identified and corrected. Research from the Wounded Warrior Project shows women veterans are more likely to present moderate to severe symptoms of PTSD and depression, and women vets have higher rates of suicidal ideation. Additionally, as you pointed out in your testimony, we know that there are documented racial disparities, such as earlier cancer risk among African American vets and increased cancer risk among women exposed to toxin and other airborne hazards. These kinds of gaps are very real and require targeted attention, and I'm concerned how this administration's attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion may impact our ability to track and close them. Commander Whitmore, what should Congress require so VA keeps measuring these disparities for women veterans and doesn't claim progress by simply stopping the measurement?
Thank you for that question. I think training is paramount. The more that the providers can have that connection with their patient is so important. And there should be choices for the women that have a provider, that their choice is a female. If they choose to have a female, that should be there for them, especially when they've experienced MST in the military. They should have that choice, not to have a man do their exams for them. They've already been through enough that they don't deserve to have that again.
Yeah.
That thought in their head.
And do you think continuing the VA to track this type of data is really important to being able to better understand what the women veterans need?
Absolutely. You can't go forward without any research and then put it into practice.
Right. Thank you, and I yield back.
Representative Hamada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, this year is a very special year. It's the 250th anniversary of our founding of our great republic. And it's because the men and women in this room who took that oath of office, took that oath of enlistment to serve our great country. It's the reason why we lasted 250 years. And typically, civilizations and empires only last 250 years. So we're at this precipice right now about how we are going to continue as a country. And for us in this room, veterans like myself and like all of you here today, it really is important for all of us to understand what that flag means and the people who sacrificed their lives for it. So thank you, all of you, for being here. Now, the veteran service organizations in this room represent millions of Americans who took that oath to serve our country and are now relying on Congress and the Veteran Affairs Administration to help honor that commitment. As an Army Reserve officer who served overseas and a member of both the Armed Services Committee and the Veteran Affairs Committee, this matter is personal for me. The veterans in Arizona's 8th District are watching. They want accountability, and they deserve results. Now, Commander, I'm going to switch gears to economic opportunity. I introduced the Improving Emerging Tech Opportunities for Veterans Act, H.R. 7103, which broadens vet tech to include emerging fields like AI and semiconductor manufacturing. My district is home to one of the largest semiconductor investments in American history, and my bill would train veterans to be equipped to be the first in line for those careers. As you know, AI is at the center of the future right now. Now, I understand the VFW has already voiced support for this legislation. Now, Commander, can you speak to why ensuring veterans have access to training in emerging technology fields is a priority for the VFW?
Thank you for that question. As you said, AI is the future, and most of the young veterans that we have now, that's their interest. And so if you have a disabled veterans, and VRNE could be part of that, I think that transition for them is crucial. I would like Ryan Gallucci to expound on that just a little bit more, or Christina. Christine, would you take that?
Yeah, thank you so much for working on this piece of legislation. Vet Tech is a program that was incredibly popular. We're looking forward to that being relaunched and including professions like this where veterans can get on-the-job training, I think is going to be incredibly crucial for their futures.
Thank you, and I'm doing my part. I know all these companies that are investing foreign direct investments into the United States. I keep encouraging them to have to hire more Americans and especially more veterans. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Conaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commander Whitmore, for your testimony, and thank you to the VFW panel for all the work you do on behalf of veterans. And a shout out to my fellow New Jersey veterans here in the room. I want to thank you and to thank all of my fellow veterans for your service. Evidence has repeatedly shown that VA care provides the best outcome for veterans. Ms. Whitmore, Commander Whitmore, would you agree that given a choice between VA direct care or community care, veterans will ultimately prefer VA direct care? Do you agree with that statement?
I think overwhelmingly veterans like to go to the VA because we do get to talk with fellow veterans and discuss our war stories with each other. It's a balance of both.
Well, I think that that relationship of shared experience is critically important to care as a physician. That's something I know well. VA care is uniquely designed to meet veterans' needs. In your written statement, you said that when VA direct care is properly staffed, funded, and managed, it delivers high-quality outcomes and earns trust. In your opinion, do you believe, and before asking this question, between January 2025 and December 25, the VA's monthly workforce dashboard showed a net loss of more than 4,000 physicians and nurses. This, again, is a report from the VA itself. In your opinion, do you believe that VA direct care is being properly staffed or funded?
I believe at this time it has been. We're closely monitoring that to see if any veterans have suffered any losses in their care. But Ryan Gallucci probably has a little more information on that.
Yes, thank you, Commander-in-Chief Whitmore. I think it certainly is a challenge to look at VA care, but one of the things that I will say is that the challenges that they've seen hiring doctors and nurses mirror what you see on the civilian side. We do poll our members from time to time, and our surveys demonstrate, yes, they prefer direct care. And with our partners at the Veterans Independent Budget, we do talk about properly investing and making sure that VA has the staff that it needs to deliver that direct care as well.
Well, it's hard for me to imagine how you can deliver better care with less of a workforce. And we see this not only in healthcare, but really across all endeavors where labor is involved. In this case, we're talking about physicians and nurses. Do you believe that these shortages could drive more and more veterans to rely on community care? And if so, what are the implications of greater reliability on community care for veterans?
It can do that. It depends on the geographic locations of the veterans. You know, in the larger cities, they're going to have more access with direct care with VA. So the rural communities have to rely on community care. I know, coming from a very small rural town myself, just how critical that was to know that I had community care when I needed it. It just depends, again, on where the veteran lives.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Representative Pappas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Commander, thank you so much for your powerful testimony here today and for your leadership and the example that you set. I'm grateful for so many VFW and auxiliary members who have made the trip here to Washington, D.C. Your presence really does help them move the needle on these key initiatives that the commander outlined, and we've got to honor that contract. And that's our obligation here in the Congress of the United States, to work on a bipartisan basis to get some of these priorities across the finish line, including things that represent fairness and justice for veterans like the Major Richard Starr Act. We've got to get that done. Now, one bill I wanted to highlight is, and thank VFW for its support, is the Claim Shark bill that I have introduced. Now, under federal law, only VA-accredited representatives may assist veterans with their claims, but these claim sharks, we know, are breaking the law. And the only reason they refuse accreditation is because they would no longer be able to profit off of our veterans. 2 decades ago, criminal penalties were removed from the statute, and we're seeking to reinstate those criminal penalties. That's why I've introduced this legislation that does that. And since I first introduced the bill in 2020, the claim sharks industry has hired lobbyists to discredit this bill and to push legislation that would legitimize their practices. Thankfully, VFW and other VSOs are fighting back against this. And while we continue to educate colleagues and try to build support within Congress to pass this, we know that you're also making progress at the state level in ensuring that state legislatures and state attorneys general are going after these claim sharks and are making some progress. So I'd like to ask you this question. While we make progress at the state level, which is a positive thing, can you talk about the necessity of getting something done here at the federal level to provide some clarity and some teeth to the law so that we can go after these bad actors?
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that statement. I would like Jason Johns, who is kind of an expert on that area, to talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you, Commander-in-Chief. As you know, Representative, recently the VA issued 2 fraud warnings about DBQ schemes, and 10 people were indicted in Puerto Rico. 7 of them were veterans who unfortunately utilized a local claim shark. Accreditation is a shield. A shield between the VA and that veteran. And as an accredited VA attorney myself, I'm held accountable for any misfilings or potential fraud, right, or errors. And so if a veteran issues an unaccredited claim or uses an unaccredited claim shark and there's any fraudulent or errors or intentional misfilings, that veteran is held liable, full stop. There is no shark of record, right? There's an attorney of record, there's a representative of record, there is no shark of record. And so it's important that, Congress upholds the laws it passed over 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, that required accreditation. It required accreditation to protect veterans from unscrupulous actors who are trying to prey upon them, right? It had a good reason then, it's still a good reason now, and Congress should stop trying to legalize an illegal activity. And we thank you for your support of this bill, Representative.
Well, we'll keep working together on it until we get it done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to recognize my friends from Maine, Steve San Pedro, and they came down here for the warmer weather. That's why they're here. You back there, Maine? Good to see you. Thank you. What I want to share with all of you is that you have tremendous power here. You're one of the most respected groups in the country. And when we're talking about these various pieces of legislation, I want you to realize that through your commander-in-chief and through your leadership, but also through your grassroots lobbying of your representatives and senators, you can make a real difference. I just want you to know the strength that you have because of the respect that you're held in by this body. Couple of points and questions. TAP promotion, you're with us, aren't you?
Absolutely.
That's for allowing VSOs to be involved in the TAP program. I believe that the government should spend as much time, money, and effort on transition out as they do on recruiting in. That's something we need to do. There's another issue, of course, we're all worried about veteran suicide. We're working with members of this committee on a bill that would provide a free lockbox for guns for veterans. No questions asked, no names, just make that safe, because what we've found is, what the studies have found, if there's a 5-minute gap between the idea and the, I have to say, the execution, it makes a real difference. 75% of veteran suicides are committed with firearms. That's an appalling number. So this is a simple, straightforward bill. It's based on a pilot program in Utah that's really worked. I hope you'll give us some help on that one. The final thing I wanted to ask about is we know that there have been staffing changes and reductions at the VA. Tens of thousands fewer people today than there were a year ago. What I need to know from you is that okay? Has it been done without affecting services, without affecting callbacks, without affecting scheduling? And we need the input from the field, Commander. If you could survey your members, because the administration basically says, no problem, this isn't affecting care, we're doing better. And I just want to be sure, from the veterans' point of view, that that's actually what's happening. So can you get back to us on that?
Absolutely. We daily monitor that, and we get feedback from our fellow veterans, and we will get back with you if we do find, any concerns or considerations to provide to you.
Well, and just yesterday I met with the secretary, And one of the issues, we talked about physician shortages. There's a cap as to what a physician for the VA can be paid, and therefore the VA is basically unable to compete in the local community. I'm going to be introducing a bill to lift that cap because I think that's a real barrier to providing adequate service to our veterans. So again, I want to thank you. You've got the power. Use it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You were briefer than usual, Senator King. I'm sorry.
Did I deserve that correct from this guy?
No, and I actually was leaning back to tell my staff to borrow one of your expressions that you said during your questioning of the witness, and I.
Nothing's trademarked, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully we have a few fellow Hoosier veterans in the room. What a great crowd. All right. Great to see all of you. What a tremendous group that you all are. Thank you for what you do in your service and what you continue to do to support our veterans. And I'm proud to represent Indiana on this important committee. America's professional, all-volunteer military is the best in the world. Not just because our country has the most advanced military technology and the best training, also because our sailors, soldiers, and airmen know our government and all of our people support them. And at a time like right now, when we have war breaking out around the world, let's keep all of our service members in our prayers as they defend us overseas. Commander Whitmore, the VA's legal authority to care for homeless veterans expired during the government shutdown last fall. They continued their programs using other authorities, but it has caused many problems. I'm introducing legislation to make the Health Care for Homeless Veterans program permanent. Can I count on VFW's support to help pass that bill?
Yes.
Thank you. Commander Whitmore, I agree the VA is not fully using the tools that Congress gave them in the PACT Act to investigate and cover toxic exposures. What more should the VA be doing?
I believe that, there's so many venues that have not been explored yet, and the veterans provide that information, and that needs to be put pen to paper with what's the symptoms are and what needs to be covered. But Christina Keenan has a little bit more information on that.
Thank you so much for the question. VA needs to have some avenue for veterans to report their conditions and report the toxic exposures they've experienced. We'd love to see these committees have some oversight of VA's process. What are they looking at? What are they researching? What are they considering as future presumptive conditions? Veterans just need to know what's happening, and some oversight would be amazing for that. Thank you.
Great. Good. We'll work on it. I look forward to working on that together. Commander, I appreciate you highlighting the need to reform how the VA plans and funds infrastructure. They need more construction funding, and they need to stretch every dollar that they have a lot further than what they do. What are you recommending in the independent budget?
Obviously, AI is our future, and that needs to be tended to, especially on VA care. I think they still have 3 different systems that they have to report on. I know as a former nurse at the VA, there was at least 2 systems that I had to log on to, and now they've added a 3rd one. So definitely needs to have some different structure and infrastructure done at the VA.
Good. Okay, we'll work on that together too. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. As a proud member of VFW at the Columbia City, Indiana Post, it's great to be with all of you today.
Senator Banks, thank you. Representative Sherfilis McCormick, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also thank you to all our VSOs who are here today doing this important work for our veterans who so need it. Ms. Whitmore, your testimony today underscores a fundamental principle. When Americans raise their right hand and swear an oath, this nation makes a solemn promise in return. The promise is not conditional, and it's not negotiable. In your testimony, you noted that the VA lost as many as 30,000 full-time employees by the end of fiscal year 2025 due to funding instability and attrition. While demand for care continues to rise, have you seen evidence that these staffing reductions or organizational changes are disproportionately affecting access to care for specific groups of veterans, including women, minorities, rural veterans, and those seeking mental health services?
Thank you for that question. We haven't heard anything specifically relating to the cutbacks, but we continue to monitor it every day.
Thank you. And if you do, please let us know. We're very concerned, or I'm very concerned about the veteran suicide that we're seeing, the cuts that are happening in that department. So really staying in close contact to make sure all of our veterans have access to health care, mental health specifically, is really one of our goals. My second question is that you also emphasize the importance of culturally responsive, trauma-informed care and improved data collection on race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and gender identity. In the light of recent VA reorganizations, do you believe VA currently has adequate oversight mechanisms in place to detect and prevent disparities in care delivered, or should Congress consider additional statutory guardrails?
I think there always has to be oversight. I don't think there can ever be too much. You know, it is a good balance that needs to happen in that. And Christina Keenan, again, has more information on that.
Thank you for that question. We do recommend that VA continue to collect data on women veterans and other groups of veterans at VA so that gaps can be identified. So if there are underserved groups, without collecting that data, we just don't know where the gaps are. So we encourage VA to continue to collect that information so that they can better serve veterans and know who needs that services.
Well, thank you. Since we have so many of our lovely veterans here, has anybody in the audience seen any gaps when it came to care because of the funding sources? You can just say aye or raise your hand. Thank you. That's a good number. And so we look forward to discussing more of how we can have any guardrails. Is there anybody else who may have any suggestions? Thank you. Thank you, then I yield back.
Thank you. Commander, thank you for your expertise and commitment. The quality of the conversation that we had today, I hope, is satisfactory to you and the VFW members that are with you and behind you. It's very valuable for our committee to have heard what you had to say today, and I appreciate your responses to our questions. We're going to pause for just a few moments while we ask you to depart the witness table and invite other veteran service organizations to present their leadership here for the continued hearing.
Thank you so
again.
much
Thank you
for
your
this
service.
time.
Yes, ma'am.
rush it along a little bit.
Can we ask the folks who are leaving, it sounds odd, but to leave, and the folks that are arriving to arrive? I need that.
A meeting at the office at 12, so I can stay until then.
Okay, I'm supposed to speak at 12, so we meet. Good morning again. We now welcome our second panel of witnesses and an additional set of audience members as well. And we are delighted that you all are here, and we are pleased to have the opportunity to hear what instructions, suggestions, and marching orders you may have for the Senate and House Committee on Veterans Affairs. I'm going to speak on the House floor, I'm not going to speak on the House floor. I haven't done that in years, but on the Senate floor momentarily, and Senator King has agreed to chair the meeting until noon. But please don't take any suggestion that I'm not interested in what you have to say, and I intend to return as quickly as I can. Our second panel of witnesses testifying today is Tammy Bartlett, the Vice President of Government Affairs for Student Veterans of America. Chief Warrant Officer 4, Scott P. Stevens, retired, the National Commander for the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America. Leah Rowe, the National Executive Director for the Blinded Veterans Association. Richard Fetro, the National President for Fleet Reserve Association. Colonel Lori M. Fenner, Doctor. United States Air Force retired Senior Policy Advisor for Minority Veterans of America. Andrew Tangen, the President of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, and Dr. Kayleen Hunter, the Chief Executive Officer of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Thank you all for being here. Look forward to your testimony as we continue to find ways to improve the lives of our veterans and their family members. Ms. Bartlett, you are recognized for your testimony.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on behalf of Student Veterans of America. From across the United States, from California to Alaska to Florida to New York, the veterans making their way from service to workforce through a transformative power of higher education are represented in today's room. If you are a student veteran, member, or a chapter leader with Student Veterans of America, please stand. Thank you. I want to begin with a simple premise. Student veterans are already succeeding. They persist, they graduate, they contribute. And all while doing this while working, raising families, and rebuilding a civilian identity in a real time. Veteran success in higher education is a known reality. Today's conversation is instead about the national return on investment. We can let veterans succeed despite friction, or we can build a system that intentionally turns their talent into national strength. A service member separates from the military and decides to pursue higher education, like many do. The GI Bill works the way it's meant to work, as a front door to stability and mobility. Enrollment is a plan instead of a gamble. Work, whether through VA work study or private sector opportunities, connects to early learning. Housing is stable throughout the year. Healthcare is reached before crisis, and campus belonging comes through trusted spaces that reduce isolation and sustains momentum. SVA's data shows that today's student veterans are overwhelmingly prior enlisted and first-generation college students, mostly between the ages of 25 and 35, frequently supporting families, and nearly 75% are working while enrolled. Even under this workload, they overwhelmingly bypass their national academic averages. When we keep the pipeline to opportunity narrow, employees lose talent and communities lose leadership. We should therefore treat this as an economic competitiveness agenda. First, we tighten the connection between education and career outcomes. Veterans pursue higher education because it remains the clearest pathway to meaningful civilian careers. We can provide access to materials and technology imperative of the 21st century. We can support paid and relevant work while veterans are enrolled in school. We can work to lower the barriers to internships. Second, we fix the visibility problem. Beyond healthcare visibility with data continuity through electronic health records, too many campuses still cannot identify the veterans who are on their campus, and that's before the benefits are certified. But with that delay, and many institutions have the system, like Common Apt, they can verify students' veteran status and benefit eligibility through a governed, permissioned data matching, and begin certification early, connect veterans to right resources early, and measure outcomes with real validity. The federal government already has secured the technical pathway that can be supported early verification and better coordination. Third, we want to protect stability from separation to career placement. Policies should reflect how veterans use their education today, including intentional online and hybrid learning. That makes school possible when you're working, caregiving, or managing a disability. At the same time, we want to structure the guardrails so flexible learning supports persistence without weakening the campus connection that drives belonging. This is a moment where we can choose to run the GI Bill as a benefit, or we can run it as a national talent strategy. SVA's national conference this year shows us what coordination efforts can do. More than 200 VA representatives provided assistance to 414 veterans. They scheduled and performed 201 exams and completed 23 disability ratings. 8 people, I'll say it again, 8 people started a claim that Thursday, were seen by an exam on Friday and Saturday, and received a decision by Monday. Life-changing. People, processes, and authorities were all in the same room with that same goal. And this is a blueprint for how VA and organizations can show up and partner at scale. Members of the committee, student veterans already show us what they can do. And every day we delay, we build into a system that is potential that we can never get back. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Ms. Bartlett, thank you. Now recognize Mr. Stevens.
Chairman Moran and Boss, ranking members Blumenthal and Takano, members of the House and Senate Committees on Veterans Affairs, my fellow veterans and ladies and gentlemen. I am C.W. Stevens, a 30-year veteran and a 94th National Commander of the Jewish War Veterans of the United States. JWV's message is strong and clear. We advocate for military and veterans benefits and services with congressional officials, executive branch departments, and the White House. We also have a special focus on combating anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate. JWV opposes religious discrimination and ethnic bigotry, and we are especially determined to speak out against anti-Semitism. During the last 6 years, JWV, the sole Jewish veterans service organization, has joined many roundtables. We have addressed hate speech and denounced anti-Semitic activities, events, and actions. JWV will continue to be a strong voice in fighting anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it arises. We recognize and appreciate Chairman Bost and Chairman Moran, as well as Ranking Members Blumenthal and Takano. We're meeting with JWV leadership in 2024 and 2025 regarding anti-Semitic activities targeting veterans and military communities. JWV also supports H.R. 6047, a bill to improve DIC and special monthly compensation benefits. JWV also advocates for legislation to immediately allow concurrent receipt of full military retired pay and veterans disability compensation for disabled retirees. Specifically, JWV is pushing for the enactment of the Major Richard Starr Act. JWV urges Congress to schedule a floor vote on the act or as an amendment to the NDAA during the 119th Congress. Congress needs to have the courage to fund people over weapons. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, for being a champion of the STAR Act. JWV joined with many auxiliary and veteran services organizations in opposing the VA's interim final rule, which affected disability ratings. On February 26, VA rescinded the IFR based on the combined outrage from VSOs and Congress. JWV supports the Fallen Service Members Religious Heritage Restoration Act, as both the House and the Senate passed their bills to begin the process of properly marking graves and honoring these courageous Jewish American service members. JWV commends Chairman Jerry Moran and the principal sponsor in the Senate. JWV supports the Senate's version with a 10-year authorization and funding from the American Battle Monuments Commission. VA recently announced a Veterans Health Administration reorganization plan. While JWV expressed concern when VA reduced its employee count by 30,000 in 2025, the department stated most of the 30,000 were vacant billets and did not involve layoffs. Under the proposed reorganization, VA would consolidate 18 Veterans Integrated Service Networks into 5, shifting decision-making from the field to the headquarters. Doctors, nurses, and other clinicians provide essential services, and those services should not be compromised, nor should staffing be reduced for VA direct care. The VHA structure must be reformed, not dismantled. Our veterans must have a fully resourced and staffed VA to provide them with the benefits and state-of-the-art medical care they have earned and deserve. JWV wants to be clear that Community Care Network is not a substitute for VA direct care. While community care funding has increased significantly, VA direct care must not be compromised. With new community care contracts being negotiated, VA will continue to monitor the results. JWV values our relationship with committee members and staff and appreciates your support. This concludes our testimony, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Stevens, thank you. Now, Ms. Rowe, you're recognized. Welcome.
Chairman Moran, Chairman Bost, Ranking Member Blumenthal, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Blinded Veterans Association 2026 legislative priorities. My name is Leah Rowe, the National Executive Director of BVA and a certified low vision therapist. Today, I represent over 130,000 legally blind veterans and over 1 million more living with serious vision loss. I ask you to champion those who sacrificed their sight in service but never lost their vision for an independent life. As we speak, American forces are engaged in conflict across the Middle East. History tells us many of these heroes will return with devastating blast-related eye trauma. While the VA provides long-term care, we must invest in research that improves outcomes for those currently in harm's way. BVA requests $20 million for the DoD CDM-RP Vision Research Program. Other federal agencies do not fund this specific blast trauma research. We urge this committee to include this in their views and estimates letters to ensure ocular trauma remains a national priority. Blindness is a low incidence, high complexity disability. To ensure sustainability, BVA urges the blind rehabilitation service funding be modeled after spinal cord injury centers to protect specialized budgets. Furthermore, accessibility is a civil right. While the VA has made mobile progress, physical kiosks remain fundamentally inaccessible to those without sight. We urge final passage of the Veterans Accessibility Advisory Committee Act. This legislation is vital because it brings all disabilities to the table, ensuring that VA leadership hears directly from the experts, disabled veterans themselves. By mandating the Section 508 compliance is a foundational requirement for all VA procurement. This committee will ensure that no veteran is left behind by new technology, regardless of their specific disability. For many, independence has 4 legs. However, our veterans face inconsistent gatekeeping, while VA facilities see a spike in incidences involving untrained animals. We urge Congress to mandate a voluntary service dog fast pass. The VA already tracks accredited guide dogs in their prosthetics database. We are simply asking the VA to auto-generate a physical or digital credential for these veterans. To support this, we propose the VA Service Animal Integrity Data Act. Make misrepresenting a pet as a service animal on VA property a federal misdemeanor. Empower VA police to remove any animal displaying aggression, regardless of their status. Require the VA to formally track and report dog-on-dog attacks to protect these $50,000 mobility tools. We must modernize the caregiver program to reflect the clinical reality of blindness. Current assessments focus on physical mobility, but for our blind veterans, the primary need is safety and support. A veteran who cannot inspect their food for spoilage, distinguish clinical medication labels, or identify skin infections is a high risk. BVA proposes eligibility automatically include veterans with corrected acuity of 5/200 or worse, or a visual field of 5 degrees or less. Crucially, we must eliminate the pay-first model for travel. Navigating the digital travel portal is a massive accessibility hurdle. We urge Congress to create an automatic catastrophic exemption for veterans with 2,200 acuity or worse, ensuring upfront ticketing and total waiver of travel deductibles. No veteran should have to choose between financial stability and the rehabilitation they so need. Finally, we urge the 119th Congress to pass the Major Richard Starr Act to end the unfair retirement offset for combat-injured veterans. We also call for full funding for gender-specific health care for our fastest-growing cohort, women veterans. Members of the committee, remove the barriers, fund the research that saves sight, and protect the programs that restore dignity. Stand with us to ensure every blinded veteran can access the quality of life they've earned.
Ms. Rowe, thank you. Mr. Fetro, welcome.
I would first like to recognize and pray for the 6 lost warriors and their families. Chairman Moran and Bost, ranking members Blumenthal and Takano, and members of the committees. My name is Richard Fetro, and I'm the National President of the Fleet Reserve Association. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of our members and the oldest sea service association with more than 100 years of service to our nation's sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, veterans, and their families. Today, I will address 3 issues of critical importance: the Major Richard Starr Act, the VA Electronic Health Record Modernization Program, and the need for a thoughtful reform of the VA disability compensation system. I will begin with the Major Richard Starr Act. Major Richard Starr, a decorated combat veteran whose military career was cut short because of wounds sustained in service. His story reflects the experience of tens of thousands of veterans wounded whose service ended through no fault of their own. The Major Richard Starr Act restores fairness by allowing these veterans with both their earned military retirement pay and VA disability compensation. About 50,000 veterans will be affected. Regarding double dipping, that claim ignores reality. Military retirement pay compensates for the years of service already rendered. VA disability compensation exists because veterans were wounded during service. Providing both benefits honors service and sacrifice. Others argue there is no money. Congress routinely finds funding for its priorities. Combat wounded veterans must be one of them. No credible case can be made that other expenditures are more important than fulfilling our obligation to those who gave their flesh and their future in defense of this nation. The Major Richard Starr Act has overwhelming bipartisan support. The second issue is the VA Electronic Health Record Modernization Program. Congress must maintain strong oversight to ensure successful completion across the entire VA system. A fully deployed and interoperable electronic health record improves access to care, reduces duplication, and ensures continuity between the VA, community providers, and the DoD. Fragmented records are not just inconvenient. They delay care and put veterans at risk. Technology evolves faster than legislation. That makes it even more important for Congress to set strong policy foundations. This is why we support H.R. 3455. This legislation allows VA to responsibly explore secure data management technologies that empower veterans and protect their information. We envision a system where veterans have control over their health data and can easily share it with providers inside and outside the VA. Rising costs are often cited without acknowledging the obvious cause. The United States has fought multiple wars over the past decades. When we send people to war, disability claims increase. That is not a system failure, that is the cost of war. Any reform must be understandable to the veterans. Veterans understand basic math, and the VA must adapt calculation method that is logical, transparent, and easy to explain. Another essential reform is automating presumptive claims through better coordination between the VHA and the VBA. When presumptive conditions is diagnosed, eligibility should be identified automatically and benefits granted or offered without unnecessary delay. In closing, the FRA respectfully asks Congress to take 3 actions. First, pass the Richard Starr Act and end the unjust offset for combat wounded retirees. Second, ensure completion of the VA Electronic Health Record Modernization Program and support innovation through passage of H.R. 3455. Third, pursue disability compensation reform that prioritizes transparency, automation of presumptive claims, and timely delivery of benefits without reducing earned compensation. These actions are about justice, readiness, credibility, and keeping the faith with those who gave their flesh, their future, and their lives in the service of this nation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Now, Colonel Finner.
Good morning, Chairman, ranking members, other committee members. I'm Colonel Lori Fenner, and I represent Minority Veterans of America. We're an organization dedicated to advancing equity for our nation's millions of minority veterans, including racial, gender, sexual, and religious. We are overrepresented in service and in the challenges we face. In fact, the past year has been devastating as we have watched decades of progress unravel as essential protections Disparity data and clinical pathways have been weakened, reversed, or erased. Veterans are now navigating a system in which political ideology, rather than evidence or statutory obligation, increasingly shapes the policies that determine our health, safety, and access to care. First, executive orders targeting transgender Americans have produced immediate consequences for gender-diverse service members and veterans. Service members have been discharged or placed in limbo, many becoming veterans against their will and suddenly. Inside the VA, these directives have destabilized clinical guidance, disrupted healthcare access, and weakened protections in shelters. No veteran should face heightened medical risk or diminished personal safety because of their gender identity. Now they do. At least stop the rhetoric of irresponsible leaders who demean and dehumanize those who serve. Second, reproductive health care has also been significantly undermined. VA's decision to remove abortion counseling and care in cases of rape, incest, or threats to health was not grounded in evidence or clinical need. It is a political decision that endangers veterans. Nearly 300,000 veterans of reproductive age rely on the VA, and many now live in states with severe bans. This rollback of access is not theoretical. It does shape futures. If you'll survive pregnancy complications or if you'll be able to conceive in the future. Pass the CRA and stop the VA's dark of night rule enacting. Third, gender-based harassment and assault in VA facilities are rising. The Deborah Sampson Act required the VA to create a comprehensive prevention and reporting system, but implementation has not matched your intent. Mandatory training was paused or diluted. Offices of responsibility have been shuttered or gutted. Essential demographic information has been erased, and by VA's own admission, too many data pathways has led to the inability to truly assess the problem. A no wrong door approach is meaningless if the underlying infrastructure doesn't work. Please enforce and improve the Deborah Sampson Act. Finally, across the country, we're watching the histories of minorities disappear. And that same erasure is happening in VA offices. Those are responsible for identifying and addressing, especially racial disparities in benefits and care, are closed, removing the very infrastructure needed to monitor inequity. For instance, reopen the equity assurance and other offices and publish the unredacted report you demanded on outdoor recreation that was a bipartisan move. The information has not been included. Publish the unredacted report. The pattern is clear across every issue area, from healthcare to suicide prevention to personal safety in VA facilities. Minority veterans have carried this nation through every conflict, even while fighting for rights at home. We took our oaths as patriots, not because conditions were fair for us. Today, as other safety nets are dismantled and protections eroded, we return here with a simple demand: that the country we defended will honor its obligations to every veteran, that no one is left behind because of what we look like or who we are. We thank you. We thank the other VSOs for their support. We thank our colleagues and coalition partners, and we celebrate Women's History Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tangent.
Chairman Moran and Boss, ranking members Blumenthal and Takano, and distinguished members of the Joint Committee, on behalf of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. Too often, we organize the transition conversation around individual subjects: benefits, healthcare, employment, housing, rather than the veteran's lived experience moving through all of them all at once. Veterans do not experience government as a seamless continuum. They encounter a series of disconnected entry points, each with its own rules, timelines, and forms to complete. Every transition introduces risks. Missed benefits, delayed care, bad information, and vulnerability to exploitation are not anomalies. They are predictable outcomes of fragmented design. This fragmentation is not caused by a lack of connection. VA itself is not broken. It is the product of decades of well-intentioned systems built to solve specific problems at specific moments in time. VA cannot predict every future need of every veteran generation. As a result, it perpetually adopts a reactive posture. What is missing is the intentional continuity, a human connection that carries veterans forward once their service has ended and follows them home. Veterans know what effective continuity looks like because they experienced it in uniform. That continuity vanishes at separation precisely when it is needed most. This is not a failure of veterans or technology. It is a failure of system architecture. Today's veterans are pushed through a transition that replaces human continuity with the illusion of access, mistaking overabundant information for connection. Transition is treated as an event and not a process. Veterans leave service connected on paper, but without a bridge to the communities upon which they return. This is where government veteran service officers, or GVSOs, operate every day. GVSOs are the local government equivalent to the federal government service, translating policy into action and connecting veterans to resources at the federal, state, county, and community levels. When continuity is absent, fragmentation multiplies risk. Veterans without a trusted point of contact return to whoever answers the phone or advertises the loudest. That is where unaccredited claims consultants, sometimes referred to as claim sharks, thrive. Veterans do not seek them out because they want choice. They happen upon them because navigating such a complex system alone makes paying for help seem reasonable. Profiting from a veteran's initial claim is already illegal, but without active enforcement to curb such efforts, how would a veteran know given the complexity of just gaining access? Early engagement with advocates prevents friction and that fragmentation creates. Recently, the VA paused and then rescinded implementation of a proposed disability rule rating after hearing concerns from veterans and their service organizations. We commend VA leadership for their responsiveness. However, ideally, these conversations occur within established channels of engagement rather than on the columns of task and purpose and stars and stripes. GVSOs are simply not another layer of support, they are a continuation of service. Life is not experienced in silos, so why do systems designed to serve veterans function as if they do? GVSOs live at the intersection of these systems. Because GVSOs are present, they see failures long before they appear in reports for you. Yet despite being called partners, GVSOs remain grossly underutilized. Congress can change that. First, by fully implementing and funding Section 302 of the Dole Act, previously known as the CVSO Act. This law reinforces continuity that already exists and ensures equitable veteran outcomes regardless of geography or local resources. NACVSO helped draft this legislation. Why create a new system when the most efficient solution is in stabilizing and scaling a proven one? Second, by reinforcing accreditation and claims integrity. Predatory actors flourish where connections are broken. Veterans deserve ethical, accountable representation, not exploitation disguised as choice. Third, by formalizing federal-local coordination. Benefits, healthcare, education, dependency, death, and survivor programs all must communicate the way veterans live their lives. GVSOs already do this work. Policy should codify the value of these most effective conduits. If a national veteran strategy is to be meaningful, it must engage and utilize what already works. Veterans do not need more warm handoffs, they need continuity. Fragmentation is a failure of architecture, not intent. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify on behalf of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. First and foremost, I want to recognize the servicewomen and men currently engaged in military operations in the Middle East. IAVA was born out of advocating for the needs of service members and veterans, and we will continue to do so for this newest group of veterans. Veterans of the post-9/11 era have shaped modern policy debates and civic life. We leave in public service, bring frontline experience to national security and healthcare discussions, and mobilize community when policy falls short. Since our founding, IAVA has delivered tangible bipartisan wins. From the post-9/11 GI Bill, to the PACT Act, to the Deborah Simpson Act, our record shows that veterans' voices change policy when paired with rigorous evidence and sustained advocacy. I've been in this job less than a year, and in that time, I am proud to take on the mantle of the legacy that IAVA holds. All of us at IAVA are looking forward to working with you to continue to build on this history and improve the lives of post-9/11 veterans. At IAVA, we build our policy agenda on one principle: evidence matters. Our 2026 priorities are grounded in what veterans told us through surveys, flash polls, and direct engagement, and the latest available research. This year, our members identified healthcare access, economic stability for veterans and their families, support for Afghan allies, equity for women veterans, and strengthening civic engagement as their top issues. I will briefly summarize each of these priorities and the actions we urge you to take. My written submission contains the research behind each of these priorities. First, veterans' health care. Access to high-quality care clearly emerged as the #1 issue for our members. While the VA provides care equal to or better than non-VA settings, veterans still face fragmented care in the community care networks, inconsistent mental health care access, persistent suicide risk, delays in disability claims, and uneven experience while making the PACT Act claims. IAVA's 2026 healthcare priorities include fully funding and rigorously overseeing the PACT Act implementation and the Toxic Exposure Fund, advancing lethal means safety legislation to strengthen suicide prevention, expanding rural and telemental health capacity, including stable funding for clinical resource hubs, and supporting research and clinical trials for innovative therapies. Second, economic stability. Veterans generally fare well on employment and homeownership averages, but disparities persist for women, veterans of color, disabled veterans, and single parents. Underemployment, credential transfer barriers, housing cost burdens, and gaps in GI Bill delivery remain challenges. Our policy asks: improve credential transferability for veterans, scale Housing First programs with robust wraparound services and case management, and hire the needed staff at the VA to do it. Protect the VA home loan programs and continue to protect the GI Bill. Sustain congressional oversight on VA benefits modernization to ensure intended outcomes reach our veterans. Third, Afghan allies and national security. Supporting the Afghans who served alongside the U.S. forces is both a moral obligation and a strategic necessity. The unfinished evacuation and SIV backlog creates deep moral injury in the veteran community and undermines American credibility. IAVA urges Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act, restore SIV processing, provide permanent legal protections for evacuees on humanitarian parole, and institutionalize reforms to prevent future allied abandonment, including increased staffing and interagency coordination. Fourth, equity for women veterans. Women are the fastest growing segment of the veteran population, yet face persistent gaps, including inconsistent reproductive and menopause care, high denial rates for military sexual trauma claims, facility infrastructure shortfalls, and underinvestment in women-focused research. Our 2026 priorities include oversight of the Deborah Simpson Act implementation, expanded comprehensive reproductive health care and access to abortion counseling, strengthening MST claims training and accountability, and advancing gender-specific research, including menopause. Fifth and finally, strengthening and protecting civic engagement. Veterans overwhelmingly view democratic participation as part of their service, yet they are concerned about voting access, mis and disinformation, digital exploitation of the veteran identity, and threats to equitable military service. We support legislation to protect and expand voting access and transparency, measures to curb deceptive political content and disinformation, protections that preserve equitable access to military service to include our transgender sisters and brothers, an expanded public service transition program to sustain veteran civic leadership. Our veterans deserve policies rooted in evidence and the lived experience of those who served. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter, and thanks to all of you for your really excellent testimony. You may wonder, you see people coming and going. hopefully AI will eventually help us to schedule around here so we don't have three things at once. But I can assure you, Senator Moran, for example, is due to make a speech on the Senate floor, which I have a feeling may touch on veterans. I have several questions or comments. Ms. Bartlett, I was particularly struck by your comments about the GI Bill. Going back to the 50s, the GI Bill is the single most important and significant economic development statute ever passed in this country. And it continues to provide those benefits every day. I think one of the things I would ask of you, and I'm going to ask all of you, is give us your 4 or 5 points about how we could improve it, where the gaps are, where the bureaucracy is a problem, and those kinds of things, because it is one of the most important programs that we have. Mr. Stevens, a similar question for you. You mentioned the reorganization. You were the only witness that mentioned the reorganization of the VA. We were presented with that somewhat out of the blue a few weeks ago. I would love to have your in-depth comments about how that will work, because it's still unclear to me where they reduced the VISNs and created a new HSA structure and how that's actually going to work in practice. So it sounds like your organization has looked at that. If you can share some of those insights with us as we build the record from this hearing. Mr. Fetro, my only comment to you is, isn't it about damn time we passed the Richard Starr Act? That's something we got to do. When that was first presented to me, I just couldn't understand it. You have two benefits that are earned that are totally separate from one another. Why should they be offset against one another? So
This year, the 250th year would be the perfect time to do it.
well, I'm certainly hopeful that we can do that. I know there's a lot of bipartisan support. It's just a question of getting it across the finish line. Your testimony is important. And finally, Dr. Hunter, something you mentioned struck me, and that is credential transfer. I think, and often that doesn't necessarily require federal law, but it's a matter of state law, where you have a skill that's built in the military, and then you have to go through an apprenticeship or exams and all the kinds of things to be state licensed, and it's redundant and a barrier. Do you agree? Is that something we need to tackle?
It is something that's often redundant, and setting federal standards often will help states comply with them so that individuals who have gained skills while they're in the military aren't having to dip into GI Bill benefits, for examples, to take training that they've already done in the military, and especially in fields like nursing, some of the mechanics that we have civilian shortages in, setting a federal standard for individuals to be able to transfer their skills would encourage states to do so.
Thank you. That's another, I'm going to ask you for your specific suggestions along those lines. I think that's something we really need to look at. And finally, before I have to leave for another meeting, I want to say to all of you what I said to the VFW. You have very respected and powerful voices here. You should use it. And we can't solve problems that we don't know about. So if there are issues that haven't come up in the testimony or that are just emerging, please communicate with this committee, because all of us are dedicated to serving you, and you have to help us to do that effectively. Representative Takano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fenner, no veteran should ever feel unsafe or unwelcome seeking care. Can you describe how President Trump's anti-DEI executive orders have impacted minority veterans across the country?
Thank you, Representative Takano, Ranking Member. Yes, first of all, these have created chaos. So from one day to the next, veterans and those becoming veterans don't know the waterfront that they will face. Also, we are erasing data. We are erasing data with AI machines and people doing word searches that impacts clinical care. We also are telling people they are unwelcome. So signage has been removed. Changes happen overnight. When I show up, I feel like I did not achieve my positions and my status as a retiree and veteran because of my merit of performance. So we can write a book about this, and we probably will. Every single anti-DEI measure, it's poorly defined in the first place, and as veterans show up, they don't have security, they don't have a surety, and there's no office for them to go to, because we've also closed every office that might have women or race or some other minority in its title. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I say that dignity and access aren't politics. They're a part of the promise that we made to all veterans. Ms. Hunter, do you have thoughts on this topic?
Yes, one of the biggest things that we see as a problem, as Colonel Fenner mentioned, is the erasure of data. We can't solve problems that we don't know the answer to. And when we have stopped, in the most recent suicide report, for example, there was no mention of LGBTQ identity. And we know that from past reports, LGBTQ veterans are at a much higher suicide risk. And understanding what interventions work and don't work allow evidence-based policy to be created. And if we don't have the data, we can't measure the policy. Additionally, there's been an inconsistent application of training. For quite a while, training on military sexual trauma was cut because of the DEI executive orders that came down. And that puts individuals, veterans who have experienced military sexual trauma at a huge disadvantage, because they are walking into an environment that doesn't know how to give culturally competent care. And the VA succeeds because of its ability to give culturally competent care. And when you remove that, you are now often double victimizing survivors.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that testimony. And this is very concerning to me. Wrong-headed policies that are resulting in very grave consequences. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hunter, Senator King was asking you about, and you were responding about, how can someone trained in the military transition to the same sort of job? A few years ago, I think we passed this, it's been like 10 years, I thought, in which I had a bill that someone trained as an EMT in the service could take that same training, or a paramedic, and use that in the private sector, figuring that if you'd handled trauma in Iraq, you could handle trauma in Lafayette, Louisiana. Do I remember that correctly, that passed into law?
That was passed into law, but we see an uneven actually application, as well as a understanding that this is something that is even possible often.
Uneven understanding by whom? By the states that regulate the licenses, or?
It's very state dependent. It can be by the states that regulate it. It can be during the transition process, the education to the actual service members as they are transitioning out, that this is a option for them to be able to.
That is therefore an issue for the armed services. This is just a nice oversight of something which I think I passed 10 years ago.
For EMTs specifically, yes, there's oversight that needs to be done, and the armed services side for the transition need to be involved. But there doesn't exist sets the same thing for some of the nursing professions.
So the only reason I bring that up is because there could be lessons learned from what we've already done for EMTs and to apply it to others, correct?
100%.
Now, nursing, I think of, nurses are in such demand. It's hard for me to think that a state nursing board would put barriers. It's just a question of licensing in the state of Louisiana versus Oklahoma versus wherever, correct?
It may be, but there's also often the nurses who have been trained, particularly enlisted nurses in the military, are required to take additional schooling before states will let them even attempt to take a licensure
But presumably
exam.
that they have had adequate training to become a nurse, a licensed nurse in the military. I'm a physician.
Yes.
And so if I signed up for the military, I'd still be a doc, right? It's just that my licensing per state is different.
Correct, but the way that nursing licenses work per state, there are states that don't recognize the military training and require additional
Let me know what that
schooling.
is, will you?
Okay, yes, absolutely, I'll get you that, because
Ms. Barlow.
I think we can take a lot of the learnings from the work that's been done on EMTs, so 100%.
I was walking in here talking to Dr. Bobby Bourgeois, Bob Bourgeois now, I knew him when he was Bobby, and he said, you know, we have these veterans who were trained to do electronics, but now, like, they're homeless. Now, I don't know if this is Dr. Bourgeois' personal experience, but the point he was trying to make was that, and based on this as well, if somebody's been traced in the military, can we bring them into training, workforce training? And he used particularly the data centers being created, which is hiring all kinds of people. So how good are we, and I'm asking, I don't know, how good are we at finding that veteran who's maybe not being able to fully use the education he or she received in the military, and then either upskilling them or licensing for things like electronics? Just turning to you.
Yes, thank you, Senator Cassidy, for that question. Programs like Vet Tech are a great avenue for those that did some type of cybersecurity or maybe drone licensing while they were in service, and now are looking to continue that into the civilian careers. In addition, SBA has had the opportunity to provide thousands of Coursera courses to our student veterans and our chapter members, again, helping to leverage some of their knowledge or interests they gained in their active duty service, now branching out into add on to their resumes going forward.
And I'm sorry, because I was trying to communicate with my colleague here, and it's been successful. What can we do to make it better?
Better is more support. Better would be helping things like the book stipend adjustment. The book stipend for post 9/11 GI Bill has been $1,000 annually since 2009.
Now, online, Coursera is an online course, so do you still, I mean, online courses theoretically have a lower marginal cost. Do you still need to spend more money?
You still have rent, you still have childcare, you still have transportation. We've helped in support of legislation to at least bring the monthly housing allowance for those who are taking all classes full-time online monthly housing allowance to the full national average. There is a piece of legislation over on the House, and that is, I'm sorry, HR 3753. That would bring the national monthly average of monthly housing allowance for those students pursuing online.
Okay. Mr. Takano.
We're closing statements, or is that questions?
Closing statement, or I'm told I'm to close out the thing. If you want to do a closing statement or in close out.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and close. Yep. Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you all for being here today. We simply cannot do our jobs without the critical input that you all have provided today with your testimony and responses to our questions. And I look forward to working with you all to ensure that Congress honors the obligations that we have to our veterans and survivors, and survivors of veterans. We still have much to do. I have to report, unfortunately, that Senator Blumenthal's efforts to bring the Major Richard Starr Act up for a vote were unsuccessful. There was an objection. I don't understand. There could be a vote on this bill. It has overwhelming support. In the House, it has more than, I think, 300 co-sponsors, I among them. And in the Senate, has similar support. We saw the support earlier indicated by the many of delegates that came in for the American Legion and those of you here representing the various VSOs here today. But we must push past this partisan resistance and get the Richard Starr Act, Love Lives On, and Caring for Survivors Act passed. It is way past time to do it, and the time to do it is now, and I vow that we will get it done in this Congress. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you.
As we conclude this hearing, I again thank our witnesses on the second panel for your work to support those who serve our nation's veterans and their families. Your efforts have a real impact. This conversation has impacted me, and I look forward to the follow-up. With that, the hearing is adjourned.